What is the meaning of suffering and sacrifice? And can anything good come out of this? Why did Christ have to suffer so much in his body and die for us? And what lessons does this have for our lives? To answer these questions, we came here to St. Petersburg, Russia, an incredible city, but a city which has endured much suffering. The Russian people have long been called to suffer and sacrifice. Just getting through the Russian winter is difficult enough. But for many, many years, they've been called to sacrifice and suffer for their children, their families, their country, and even just to survive. One of the greatest occurrences of suffering and sacrifice occurred in the siege of St. Petersburg, or Leningrad, during World War II. In the summer of 1941, Hitler and the Axis forces launched Operation Barbarossa, which was the invasion of the Soviet Union with the intent of utterly destroying and enslaving the Slavic people and repopulating it with what they viewed to be as a superior Aryan race. It was an evil, demented plan, and incredibly, they launched a 3 million person army to accomplish this goal. And so Hitler ordered Leningrad to be sieged and starved out in an intentional act of genocide. Hitler said that after the defeat of the Soviet Union, there could be no further use for this large urban center in Leningrad. He said that if surrender were sought, it would not be given. And the Nazi forces were so confident of their victory that they ordered flyers announcing a victory party to be held at a famous hotel. And purportedly, the plan was to rename the city Adolfsburg. And so began the greatest siege of a major urban center in modern history and perhaps the history of the world. The Axis forces surrounded the city, cutting off access to the outside world. The siege was terrible. Food rations were cut. People began to starve, and they began to search for anything and everything that they could eat. Pets, animals. They even took wallpaper off the wall and stripped the glue to eat it. One woman tells a story of her uncle who took her newborn child, and he was hungry. But she snatched the child away from him and ran away, and a bomb hit and struck the building, killing her uncle and saving the child. But others were not so fortunate. In another story, a mother decided, along with her older son, who was handicapped and ill, to deny him the food rations and to give this food to his brother and sister so that they might survive. With both food and energy supplies cut off, thousands starved to death. Others died of exposure and the cold. And still others simply gave up on life. But not everyone died. One of those who survived was Tanya Savacheva. Tanya's father had died when she was 6 years old, leaving her mother a widow and 5 children. And in the summer of 1941, the Savachevas had planned to leave the city, to go out to the countryside. But as the Axis forces surrounded the city in a ring, they were trapped inside. And there Tanya and her family, like everyone else, worked various jobs, supporting the army, supporting the city, and simply trying to survive. And Tanya kept a diary of her time during the siege of Leningrad. And in this diary, Tanya recorded the deaths of everyone around her, including her family and loved ones. This is what she wrote. Zhenya, sister, died on December 28, 1941. Grandma died on January 28, 1942. Uncle Vasha died on April 13th. Uncle Lisha died on May 10th. Mama died on May 13th. All the Savachevas are dead. Everyone is dead. Only Tanya is left. Such terrible death, such terrible suffering. More than 1 million people would die in the siege of Leningrad. And Tanya's diary, which was so vivid and so visceral, was used in the Nuremberg trials after the war to convict the Nazis of war crimes, crimes against humanity. The siege of Leningrad was one of the worst events in human history, and the city was indeed surrounded by the Axis forces. And yet, there was one way out of the city, a frozen road which formed an ice bridge, and some brave Russian soldiers loaded up food and supplies onto trucks and drove it across this frozen lake to bring help and hope to the city. And these soldiers had to keep the doors to the trucks open because these massive trucks could crash through the ice at any moment, plunging them to their deaths. Many did indeed die, but because of their sacrifice, others were allowed to live. And the road upon which these trucks were driven to deliver these food and supplies was called the Road of Life. And today, on the edge of the lake, outside of the city, there's a memorial called the Broken Ring, remembering all those who suffered through this siege and commemorating the brave soldiers who broke the ring that surrounded the city and brought life to the people. And in the city, there is another memorial called the Flower of Life, remembering all those children who suffered through this siege. My friends, Jesus Christ is our road to life. Jesus said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." Satan and sin may surround us. Life may look hopelessly lost. But through Christ and His suffering and sacrifice on the cross, we too can have new life. There's a massive gulf between us and God, caused by our sin, our mistakes, our failures. But Christ forms a bridge between us and God. After the siege ended, there were some nurses that went throughout the city searching for orphans. And these nurses found Tanya Savacheva and over 140 children. And I would like to say that Tanya Savacheva went on to live a long life. But sadly, Tanya was sick and died 2 years later from tuberculosis. That is why Christ's death for us, as great and incredible as it is not the end of the story. If Christ had died and had not come back to life, it would still be an incredible sacrifice, but it would be a rather sad story. This is why the rest of the story is so important, because Christ not only died, but was buried and was raised from the dead. And because of this, we have hope for our lives. And someday, Christ will return. And Tanya and everyone else who has died before us will be raised from the dead and come back to life. There's a saying that says, "No one is forgotten and nothing is forgotten." My friends, God has not forgotten us. He has not forgotten you. He loves us. He gave His Son to die for us, sacrificing His life so that we might live. And so we live our lives, sacrificing our lives for others out of gratitude for what Christ has done for us. So now, how about you? What do you think of suffering and sacrifice? What do you think of this story of the sacrifice of these soldiers and of Christ's sacrifice for us? And how can Christ's sacrifice bring us new life?